back to A Chapter a Day.
Keeps the devil away.
I'm Pastor Fleck. That's Pastor Hong. We are outlining John chapter 9. We're going to find some observations, some interpretations about the nature of man, the character of God, and then land the plane with some applications. A sin to avoid or confess, a promise to claim, example to follow, a command to obey, and a knowledge to believe. Verses 1 through 7 of John 9 is the healing of a man born blind. And the ultimate question, whose fault is it, this man or his parents, that this dude was born blind? And Jesus answers that question. Then Jesus gets into the neighbor's inquiry and the initial investigation. The astonished neighbors and acquaintances debate if it's the same beggar. He confirms he is, and the man they call Jesus got his sight back, or gave him his sight for the first time, and they seek Jesus, but he is gonzo. Then you got, the next thing is the Pharisee's first interrogation. He's brought the Pharisee. He says that he was healed. Then the parents are questioned in verses 18 through 23. Then the second interrogation, and then he's expulsed from the synagogue. He's pressed again. The man boldly testifies of God's work through Jesus, and he urges the Pharisees to become his disciples, and then they mock him, and they're just like, who are you to teach us? Then Jesus finally meets up with him again and teaches him on what real blindness is in verses 35 through 41. Okay. Observations. What you got?
All right. It is so clear reading through the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and now John, how much the Sabbath comes up.
Yeah.
It is like just this major, major theme in all four Gospels that Jesus is doing stuff on the Sabbath.
Right.
And they hate it. And Jesus seems really intentional to be doing stuff on the Sabbath and to make sure that the authors of the Gospels write down he's doing stuff on the Sabbath. It's just very interesting to me how much, it's an important fact, an important point that we understand God's purpose for us in the Sabbath as a day of rest, as
Healing.
a day of worship, as a day of healing, as a gift from God.
I love that.
And not a burden.
Yeah, that's so good. And it feels like for them, the Sabbath was just a beating.
It seems like here's the line.
Yeah.
There's the Jesus on one side who's showing the Sabbath to be this amazing day of God's grace and goodness and healing and rest, and there's the people who don't get the Sabbath on the other side who are just angry all the time and want to kill him.
Okay, yeah, I love that. And how about it's interesting how Jesus uses mud, and
Yeah, right.
and then also he sends them to the pool of Siloam, which means sent. I'm trying to see, is there anything in that that's significant that I'm not seeing? The only thing I can think of, like, he's going back to creation, of forming his eyes again or something. And like, this is the mud and the spittle. He is taking the mud,
Yep.
taking the spit, putting it on his eyes, and like kind of doing a redo. For what sin has marred, he can go back and fix and recreate.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. And the idea of, the pool of Siloam meaning sent, he puts that in parentheses here. He has a purpose for this.
Yeah.
And so at the end of the chapter, verse 34, it says that they cast him out, right? And so this is a big, theme as you get toward the latter half of John.
Right.
Aligning yourself with Jesus means being cast out of the Jewish
Or
way of
maybe
doing things.
sent out.
And yeah, exactly. So they're cast out by the Jews, but sent by Jesus.
I love that.
And so you see that chapter 9 is kind of a turning point here. Yeah.
Yeah. I think we mentioned it, but just the Pharisees, they're arrogant. They're fixated on the Sabbath minutia and the doctrinal superiority, and they can't even see when God chooses to do something. Even if God was all about the Sabbath is the way they interpreted it, but he wanted to change it to heal somebody. Like, they should be on board with that.
Yeah, like at no point are they ever just like, all right, guys, this is pretty cool, though. Look at all these people he's healing. Like, obviously, there's something about this guy.
I mean, they're going straight
They
demonic.
just don't care. Yeah.
Yeah.
They just do not care.
Yeah, and maybe if you're from a different faith tradition, you kind of look at other people and someone gets healed and it's, maybe a little charismatic for you. At some point, you got to go, I really hope that person's healed. That's exciting.
Yeah.
As opposed to straight up demonic. Like, you can't just go, someone getting healed and their life being transformed for the better and they're glorifying God walking out. It's hard to call that demonic.
Yeah. I also love here when where is it? Verse 27. He answered them, I've told you already, and you would not listen. Why do you want to hear it again? Do you also want to become his disciples? Like this whole chapter is like kind of funny to me. And this guy, he's like, he's kind of like mocking them right here. He's like, look, I told you my story. It's pretty simple. I was blind, now I see. Are you guys wanting to follow Jesus too? Because I can,
I mean, he's ripping them.
Yeah.
and it kind of shows you that he has like, sometimes I think we have this, as C.S. Lewis would put it, chronological snobbery, where we don't think people were smart enough to kind of like, that's quick-witted, like, comeback.
Right. And
like, oh, so you're asking so many questions. It looks like you want to be his disciple. And that infuriates them.
Yeah, it's so funny to me.
I do appreciate that the initial question. I feel like that's something that we need to really help people wrestle with. Because we asked this question, verse 2, Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind?
Yeah, that's good.
There has to be somebody to blame. And he's saying here, it's not necessarily that anyone's to blame, but God's to be glorified.
Yeah.
And that's just true.
Yeah. There are consequences for sin. And sometimes, our sins can harm other people. There's brokenness in the world that affects other people. That's our fault sometimes. But there's also just the reality of, there's stuff that, man, it had nothing to do with you or your parents or anything. It's just you live in a broken world and bad stuff happens. And yet we serve a redeeming God who can turn all things for good. And he allows bad things and dark things and suffering and pain to happen ultimately so that he can show his glory in either giving us strength to persevere those things or healing us from those things, delivering us from those things. God always has a purpose for his own glory in whatever the broken, hard, or difficult thing is.
Yeah, I also find it interesting here that his parents sell him out.
Man, yeah.
Like, hey, listen,
they were just
keep me out of it. I'm not going to stand up for my son. He's of age. Ask him. And you're like, what?
I think this gets to what the truths about the nature of man. Verse 22.
Let's get into that.
Yeah, his parents said these things because they feared the Jews. For the Jews had already agreed that if anyone should confess Jesus to be the Christ, he was to be put out of the synagogue.
Right.
They cared more about what other people thought of them and not being kicked out of, their social group and their religious group rather than, what was true and even their own son.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah. All right. Another truth about man. I think people often attribute suffering to personal or ancestral parental sin.
Yeah.
Like this is your fault or somebody's fault in some way.
Yeah.
And now to be fair, you all blame it back to the ancestral sin of Adam. But that would have been funny. Whose sin is his sin or his parents? Well, not his parents, but his parents.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
What else you got?
Verse 18, the Jews did not believe that he had been blind and had received his sight until they called the parents of the man. You just see this natural skepticism.
Right.
And so this is in all of us. And, sometimes it's like, it's a good thing. You don't want to be naive and just believe everything you see and hear and all that. You want to be discerning.
But at some point,
yeah,
unbelief manifests as willful blindness.
Right. Yeah. You can understand, okay, wait a second. Is this a real story? I'm like that. But then upon investigation, they don't go, hey, seems like he really got healed. Yeah. They go, there's no way.
Right. Okay. How about some truth about the character of God? God's sovereignty is displayed through human weakness and even suffering. And that and this isn't a Romans 8:28 verse. However, it kind of is. This is seen so the works of God might be seen through him. So all things work for the good of those who love God and are called according to his purpose. And this guy's purpose was to be healed. And there was a distinct purpose for this man's suffering, was to fire up the Pharisees, and then also for him to recognize how beautiful sight is and to show the world how blind the world is in comparison.
Yeah, that's good. Jesus is a healer. Jesus is merciful. I think, this gets me excited about heaven. When I think about, there are these healings that happen in the Gospels. You see it, or, we even see miraculous things like this today from time to time. These are glimpses, previews, foretastes of heaven when all will be healed.
Yeah.
And this just gets me so excited about the world that God has for us. The new creation is a world of eternal life, of no sickness, no death. Like this man being healed, it gets me excited about heaven.
Yeah. I like that God always follows up. Like he heals him and he loops back around and is like, hey, just to make sure you know who I am.
Yeah. Yeah, after he was cast out. So now he's got nowhere to go.
Right.
He's a loner now, and yet Jesus goes to him.
Mm-hmm.
It's really good. Jesus goes after the loners. Jesus doesn't leave those people.
And what's really great is, I don't know how he got connected to the disciples or anything. I think so or hope so. But like, hey, you need community, and Jesus is going to make sure kind of loop around to make sure you aren't alone.
Yeah.
Let's get into some spec. That's sin to confess or avoid, promise to claim, example to follow, command to obey, or knowledge to believe. What you got?
No, example to follow, verse 38, the blind man says, Lord, I believe, and he worshiped him. That's the right response.
Yeah.
That's the right response to encountering Jesus, is believing in him and worshiping him.
How about this one? Command to obey. Go wash and you will see. In other words, just do what Jesus says to do, and you will see the purpose of it later.
Oh, I like that.
What about...
I like just tell your testimony.
Yeah.
Where is verse 25? He said, whether he's a sinner, I do not know. He didn't know anything about Jesus at this point. He just knows, verse 27, one thing I do know, that though I was blind, now I see.
Yeah.
Telling your testimony can be that simple.
Yeah. It's like, listen, this is how I was.
Yeah.
This is how I am. I'm going to tell you, all I know is the guy just washed my eyes and it happened. All right. That's all I got.
I used to be, a drunk, and I prayed to Jesus and he set me free. I used to be addicted to pornography. I used to be, an angry person. I used to be an abusive person, but I came to Jesus and he changed me, and I want to tell you about him. It's that simple.
How about sin to avoid willful blindness that dismisses God's work in other people's lives because of fear, if you're afraid of something?
Yeah. What about verse 31? God does not listen to sinners. But if anyone is a worshiper of God and does his will, God listens to him. Knowledge to believe. God doesn't listen to sinners. Well,
I don't know. Is that true? Because what's the only prayer? I guess the only prayer that God's going to hear, if you will, is the one of like salvation.
Well, so I think when it says sinners, it doesn't mean people who sin, people who have a sinful nature, people who sin. I think it means unrepentant sinners.
Fair enough.
God does not listen to people who are
an unrepentant sin. Okay.
In unrepentant sin.
Although I think this is, I don't want to go prescriptive on this because this is the guy talking about.
That's true. That's true.
It's a description of what it's a description of that one particular guy's belief.
Right.
But I don't necessarily think it's wrong per se.
It's an Old Testament teaching though.
Yeah.
The eyes of the Lord are toward the righteous, and his ears toward their cry. Psalm 34.
Yeah.
Psalm 66. If I had cherished iniquity in my heart, the Lord would not have listened.
Nice.
So I think to me that what that means is like, and to get to the application too, is like, are you in unrepentant sin? Are you cherishing sin in your heart? Or are you turning to God in faith and repenting from your sin?
Right.
If you're cherishing sin in your heart, don't expect God to bless you or hear your prayers.
Yeah, I was just thinking of 1 Peter 3.
Yeah.
Live with your wives in an understanding way so that your prayers may not be hindered.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think there is like the way that you treat the ones you're supposed to love the most and you don't do it well, there's going to be a hindrance to your prayers because you're living without faith in God. You're living in faith in you.
Psalm 145:19, he fulfills the desire of those who fear him. So I think, application is don't cherish sin in your heart and think that you can just kind of get away with it and that everything's going to go, like repent, confess your sin so that God might hear your prayers. And
don't go with the Jesus and I have a deal.
Yeah, right.
All right. Hey, I think that's good. I feel like that's I feel like the biggest thing is like, hey, can make sure you have a testimony. This guy's the classic one-word testimony, blind see. And I would pray that you would think about what is one thing you think about who you were to who you are, and who could you share that with today? Hey, thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time on A Chapter a Day.